All right, real happy to have my next guest on the Sports 101 Card Shop guest line. He's the president, CEO of Schulte Sports. He's also the director of public relations for the National, not plural, and the Industry Summit. He's had an astounding career, and I'm happy to get to talk to him a little bit about some of his experience. So, Mr. Ray Schulte, thanks for coming on.
Well, John, thank you for having me.
Oh, pleasure is mine. I appreciate it. Truthfully, I probably should have had you on sooner, but I know you're busy and things are crazy. You come, Schulte Sports. I believe you can correct me if I'm wrong. You started it in the 80s, but you were involved in public relations even prior to that. You've worked with the likes of Pistol Pete, Howard Johnson, Don Mattingly, in no particular order, Buck Showalter, Cal Ripken, many others. I mean, was that something you knew you were kind of wanted to do, or did it just kind of happenstance into that?
Well, it's a quick story. I was with the J. Walter Thompson, which at the time was the largest advertising agency in the world, and I was an account supervisor, so on the account side. And one of the projects that I was asked to work on was I was going out to secure an athlete for a new product that Carnation was coming out with. And so I went out and I've never did this before. And I asked a lot of questions, made a lot of phone calls, and finally came up with, I thought it was a really cool idea, and that was dealing with Sugar Ray Leonard. And Sugar Ray, I don't remember, but back in the late 70s, early 80s, he was hot. I mean, he was like 7-Up hop. He was really in demand. And so I tracked it, the info down and got to his agent, which was his attorney in Baltimore. I said, we're interested. He said, great. I said, can you send me some information? He did. And it was, 8 by 10, and it was like a one-page bio. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this guy is like on the top of the world right now, and this is all they have. And so we did the commercial, and then we actually brought Sugar Ray Jr. into the commercial too. And it was for aspartame, and it was like I said, a new product, and it really worked out well. But it got me thinking. He said, back in those days, athletes weren't being packaged like we were packaging a product on the retail store shelf. There was a couple, I think there was like ProServe, and there was a couple other companies, but they were mostly the tennis and golf. And so I got the idea of, maybe I can package an athlete just as well as I can package a box of hot cocoa. And so I started doing some research, and back then we didn't have the computers like we have today, and it was really just doing mandatory work. And I got more intrigued by it, and I talked to more people about it. And so finally I said, I was visiting a friend of mine down in Florida, and he was good friends with, actually he did the insurance for Pete Maravich. And so I was telling him this, and he said, listen, you should talk to Pete. And, he's the guy that you could talk to, and maybe he can give you some insight. I said, absolutely. So I flew down to Florida. I flew down, and Pete was conducting basketball camps down in Clearwater, Florida, with his dad, Press. And so I was fortunate to get to see him, get to talk to him. And he said, Ray, let's continue this discussion. Let's go. We went over to my friend's house the next morning. We talked for like 3 or 4 hours. And he was more amazed at what I did in terms of packaging, because he said, Ray, if I had you back when I was playing, I'd be $1 million richer now. And I said, why? He goes, well, because my dad and an attorney in Louisiana, they never did any of this kind of stuff. I said, that's exactly what I want to do. So he hooked me up with a partner of his in the basketball camp. And so I had breakfast with Jim Krebax, it was a young guy. He was actually a cool guy. He played basketball at the University of Texas. He was a fantastic young up and coming guy, but he was actually, I found out, he was representing minor league baseball players. And so some of his stable of athletes at the time was, I don't know if you remember these guys, but Alvin Davis, Spike Gowen, Howard Johnson, just some really, really cool guys. And Don Mattingly was one of them. And so I talked to him. I said, listen, I can do everything off the field for you. In other words, I can do all the stuff that lets you kind of hone in on looking for players and doing the on-field activity. I can handle all the off-the-field. And he was thank God he had vision and said, yeah, you know what, put something together. I went back to New York and I spent 6 months kind of doing my due diligence, putting a plan together. I had a plan like that thick. I don't even say that thick. And so I went back down to Florida. I presented it to about 7 or 8 people. And halfway through the presentation, they said, all right, listen, we're good. Let's go for it. Let's do it. So they gave me X amount of dollars seed money. I quit the agency. And as I was leaving the agency, I'm walking down the hall saying, oh, my God, what am I doing? Because I was walking down the hall and I was looking in offices and I'm thinking to myself, these people are much smarter than I am. Why aren't they doing this? And so, but I did it. For some reason, I just said, this is something I want to do. So I left the agency. I started in New York. Don Mattingly was, he was in AAA at the time, basically. And he was just popping up. And I got to meet him before he got into the majors. And so I was focused, I was committed. And I was fortunate because I had some people out there. I did some consulting work for Adidas, and I did some other things. The players that I had were good, but they weren't money makers for me at the time. And so a lot of the seed money got me through the first year. And that's when licensing kicked off too. It was the first time really that licensing, player images, player photos, all the above, and so we started to take advantage of that, and it got me in at the right time. So Mattingly obviously had a great 1984, 1985, obviously great career. I was able to work with other athletes. I worked with the Roberto Clemente family for like 10 years, representing Roberto's rights. I got to meet Cal earlier on in my career. And then when he was retired, he asked me to come to Baltimore to work with him. And I was actually living in Arizona working with Buck Showalter when he was manager of the Diamondbacks. Buck got fired, and so I was actually commuting to Baltimore to work up with Cal. And finally he said, listen, I need you around the water cooler, which meant that he needs me there full time. Now, again, this was like 2001, 2002. And what got me so excited was the fact that I wanted to take him through his Hall of Fame year, 2007.
Yep.
And for me, I said that, that's the Super Bowl for me in terms of marketing. And so I made a decision. I moved from Scottsdale, moved to Baltimore, worked with Cal. It was great. And we did a lot of fantastic things, a lot of branding, a lot of changes in the infrastructure of his business. And so it really worked out for me. And in the meantime, I'm working with people within the hobby, because we're working with signatures and, forgeries and, trying to keep pace with everything that was going on back in the 80s and early 90s. And so that's really how I got started. And, with all that experience that I accumulated, all the relations I had back I guess when the National was in Baltimore, Mike Burkus and John Brogy cornered me the year before in Cleveland and said, listen, we could really use you to help us in terms of taking it forward with communications and media relations and all that. And I was at a point there that I said, this sounds really good, because I had already consulted with all the leagues. I started with Major League Baseball in 1991 with the All-Star Fan Fest. I brought the collectors and the licensees in, so it was kind of a show within a show. And then I did that for like 12 years. And then the NFL asked me to come work on the Super Bowl, and I worked with Bill Barron for 4 years, helping him. And then the NHL, the NBA asked me to come on. So there was actually 2 years where I was working all 4 leagues, and that was pretty hectic. But so I got involved in that respect. Got to know a lot of exhibitors, got to know a lot of the business, and so it was something that I was not a diehard collector. If you ask me today what I collect vintage movie posters, and because I love the story, and if somebody asked me, like, why am I involved in the hobby? It's not because I want to sell trading cards or I want to sell, memorabilia. It's basically because I love the story behind everything that you see, everything that other people collect. I love listening to the stories. I love telling my own stories. I love telling stories about movie posters. How in the old days when the movie houses send out to the various cities, but in order to get the next movie, they had to send them back. So I mean, and that's just a little bit of what the big story is, but it's really fascinating. So for me, collecting is what it's all about. You could be collecting anything, and I love it. So that's kind of it.
So it was Pistol Pete that really lifted you off, got you kind of headed in that direction. It was his words that
that was probably the biggest introduction and follow through that I ever had. Yeah, and I love the guy, and he was such a. I didn't know him during his playing career. I knew him after, obviously, and so. But I got to hear some fantastic stories, and he always told the truth. Yeah. And sometimes you had to tell him, hey, I don't want to hear too much, but
or you get this, or you get this line, hey, this stays here. That's this doesn't leave the room. But man, just amazing how you took that leap of faith, like you said, even walking down that hallway, wondering, am I good? There's a lot of smart people here. Yet here I am going to be the one doing this, and apparently you did very well. And now do you still work with Donnie Baseball? I thought you did. You still involved?
Yeah, I've worked for Donnie since 1984, and we're still going on now. It's been a terrific experience for me. He's one of my best friends, if not my best friend. I mean, I've gone through so much with him, and vice versa. He's been there when I needed help. Just a fantastic guy. He's the guy who you see on TV. He doesn't have any kind of secondary personality.
No false pretenses. What you see is the real person. And it's funny, growing up in New York City, when I was younger, I was a huge Thurman Munson kid. And I've told this story on the show, Ray. Thurman Munson was really the first time as a 6-7-year-old boy that I learned what death was. I really didn't have any sort of preconditioned notion about it. And then that plane crash, unfortunately, tragically occurred. And I remember seeing it on the news in Brooklyn and, watching the news. And they said Thurman Munson's plane crash and he died. I knew it wasn't good. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know exactly, really what that meant at that age. And I was raised by my grandparents. And I asked my grandfather, who knew I liked Thurman Munson, and he explained it to me in the best he could that he's no longer here, he's gone to heaven, and he won't be and I just will tell you how old I was. I said, so he's not going to play for the Yankees no more. I didn't grasp the gravity of the situation. No, he won't. Unfortunately, he won't. And I remember crying. It was probably. Here I've never met him. I had a little 5x7 autographed by him that the Yankees sent when I wrote him a letter. And it was probably the first time I cried over someone passing away that I never met. And it was really the first time I dealt with, the word death and what all entails with that. And, then the Steinbrenners, so I kind of grew up a Yankees fan. And then the Steinbrenners kind of start trading everybody, signing everybody, kind of really too hands-on for me. And so I kind of became a Mets fan. But where I'm going with this in a long-winded way was Don Mattingly. Even though at that point I had kind of I was a huge Don Mattingly guy. Just the way he played the game, hard-nosed, never bashed his teammates, always kind of stuck up for his teammates. Didn't do a lot of talking. Did his talking with his play, and just
I'll tell you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll tell you a quick story. It kind of sums up Donnie. In '84, he had such a fantastic year, winning the batting title, and in '85 the MVP, and so I obviously got a lot of people calling, asking for him to do this or do that, get involved in this, get involved in that, and whether it's from a PR standpoint, from an endorsement standpoint, or appearance standpoint, it didn't matter. I was deluged for a couple of years there. And so, I would go to him, and basically after a while, he basically say, "Ray, listen, I appreciate everything you're doing here." He goes, "But the only place I want to see my name is really on the scorecard." And right there, right then, I knew who he was. I knew what he wanted to accomplish. And basically, so I said to him, we agreed that, listen, all right, Donnie, I understand that. But there's one thing I want to do is I want to be able to come to you and tell you things that are pretty significant, because what I don't want to do is I don't want you like 4 or 5, 10 years down the road say, "Hey, I wish I had known about that." I said, "I'm prepared to walk away and say, I understand you don't want to do it, but I want you to know about it." And that's what's really kicked us off in terms of having an understanding of his focus and his determination and commitment, and at the same time understanding what I needed to do too. And so he was great about that, and he still is. I mean, he's the type of person that basically is he's if you looked at a Yankee, he is pride and everything else that comes along with being a Yankee.
Yeah, and it's funny you said that. I became, even though I wasn't so much a Yankee fan anymore, I was a Don Mattingly fan. I remember the batting race you talk about in '84, him and Dave Winfield going back and forth. I remember them, joking around and having fun with it. They'd ask, Don Mattingly, who's the better hitter? And he'd say, well, Dave hits the ball further than I do. And Dave Winfield said
he loved Dave Winfield, though. He had so much respect for Dave. But funny that night, though, the night before the batting, his last game, which we actually won the title, we all went out to dinner, and he had a glass of wine. And so the next morning, I got a call from his mother-in-law. And she was all concerned about the day and what's going to happen. He had a glass of wine last night, and it was just so funny because it was just so real and just so down to earth. And I said, "Don't worry about it; he'll be fine." And then he goes out and does what he did. But it was just a fun time for me.
Yeah, and baseball, it's still the same game, but some of the personality have changed. Some of the, this is obviously back then. It was before the social media that we're so accustomed today. It seems like players were a little bit more, I don't know if friendly's the right term, but a little more accessible, a little bit more, signed. But I remember going to spring training games myself, and they would come over to the first or third base lines and go right down the line and sign, and then the rest of some of the other players would come over. It just seemed a lot more of that than we see today. I know that there's a lot more sometimes with these players are involved into pulling them in different directions too. I'll
tell you one thing. I mean, from a player side, from my side representing a player, it's gotten to the point now too where you can go to a private signing, and the player's got to be really careful what he says and what he does, because you never know when somebody's doing a Facebook Live. And so it's got to the point where it's kind of sad, and that you have to put yourself in that position. But you're right. Social media has been great, but it's also been very dangerous for a lot of people too.
Yeah, and listen, there's this a two-sided coin. The be, full disclosure. There's people who are, for me as a kid, I just wanted an autograph because I looked up to him. Others got a book with like 10 cards, and today now they're on eBay, 30 minutes after the ink hasn't even dried on it. And the players, the celebrities, the athletes, the players, they know that too. It's a difficult spot to be in, and they can't pick. Well, I think this young man really looks up to me. You can't play that game. It puts them in a sort of a catch-22, and some of them, maybe handle it better than others. The one thing, being a Don Mattingly fan, I remembered, when the Dodgers hired him, I thought it was very strange to see him. I always thought, he was going to retire Yankee. He's going to be a coach, maybe, maybe not a manager right away, a coach, and then eventually manage the Yankees. And so when he went to the Dodgers, I always thought it was just odd seeing him, wearing that Dodger script on his chest. And now, obviously, with the Marlins doing very well with a young group of young players. They made the playoffs last year, and it seems to be doing real well. It's weird seeing him on a second, on the second half of his career, and the dugout not wearing the Yankees.
I tell you what, it was the timing had a lot to do with it too. He was given a tremendous opportunity, having Joe Torre out there as manager of the Dodgers. And him and Joe are good friends, and so Donnie had talked about coaching and managing at some point. But Donnie wanted to work for it. He didn't want to be. The Yankees wanted. The rumor was the Yankee fans wanted him to be Yankee manager. Well, he actually didn't want that because he felt that he needed to work his way into that position.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Joe Torre was in L.A. and Joe basically said, "Hey, Donnie, maybe this is a good opportunity for you," Donnie jumped at it because one, it was a great job, and it was under the tutelage of Joe Torre, and so he jumped at that opportunity, and from there he learned an awful lot. Of course, you do learn an awful lot with Joe. Joe has a little different a method of managing and dealing with players and all that, and obviously it's worked. And Donnie is, Donnie's had the benefit of playing for so many different, cool, high-profile managers, Billy Martin and Yogi and so many others that Lou Piniella, that he just felt that he was, that was the right thing for him to do. The Marlins job was perfect for him because he prefers working with the young guys. He really does. He really loves that. I mean, he's in seventh heaven right now with the young pitching staff they have down there, and everything else that goes along with it. People say, well, you don't get the big leaguers. I mean, the big guys. And he says, I don't care. I like what we're doing here. I like what we're trying to accomplish and working with these young guys. And these guys, if we had an established veteran team, these guys wouldn't get that shot. So, he's happy about that. And he's got Trey Hillman down there with him, and just a really good environment for him right now. So I'm going down there. I'll be going down there Friday, the day after tomorrow, and spending 4 or 5 days. It's taking my son down because this time last year, we were about to go down, and the next day, basically, or the day before we were supposed to go down, the whole COVID pandemic thing came up, and Major League Baseball closed down spring training. So he was disappointed. I was disappointed. So I promised him we'd go down this year no matter what. So we're excited to get down there and watch some baseball.
That's cool. Yeah. And as a kid that went to some spring training games, it's hard to put into words, at that age to be that close to people you look up to and players. That I wouldn't trade that, for anything. I got to ask the question, just being a Don man. I mean, maybe not next year, maybe not 3 years, 4 years. You think Don ever winds up back in the Bronx in some capacity?
Well, I think that Given the right situation, he would definitely want to come back if the circumstances were right. I think right now he's extremely happy and not looking for anything. But who knows what's going to happen? 3, 4, 5 years down the road. He's still, he's still in his own mind establishing himself. Even though he won the Manager of the Year, still, he's never satisfied with being able to max out his abilities, and that's one of the things that I always loved about him. And I tell my son all the time, listen to Donnie when he talks, because there's no one better than him to kind of give you that whole thing about commitment and focusing. I mean, I've never seen a guy. And so many times I know this is brought up, here's a guy from the Midwest. He comes in New York. There's so many distractions. And why didn't he veer off? Why didn't he become Hollywood? And he had two parents that were just really, really, fundamentally sound and did a great job of raising him and his kids. And so I still learn things from Donnie. There's times when, I made the comment last year where hey, a lot of these guys, they're playing hard, but they're not really going through a lot of the what they would do during a normal season. And he stopped me, he corrected me. He goes, Ray, we compete every day. We don't care. We're gonna go out there, and I don't care what the circumstances are. We walk on that field. We're gonna play our hearts out. And he was always the one. When you talk about at the end of the season, he'd love facing pitchers at the end of the season, because he always felt like they were tired. And a lot of players, they just want to, September, October, they just kind of like, well, okay, let's kind of phase it, wind down. Well, he was winding up, and if you ever look at his batting average during September, October, it's pretty high. He'd love taking advantage of that situation.
Well, that's why, to me, too, Ray, that's why he's a great manager. I mean, he's just a cerebral baseball player. I mean, I knew that even as a 12, 13, 14-year-old from 84 to 86. He just is a grinder, is a competitor. They could be down 13-3, and you're watching him play. He's playing like the score's still tied, and that really, I didn't lose sight of that. I remember as a 13-year-old kind of looking at that and saying, wow, like everyone else is just thinking about hitting the showers and coming back tomorrow, maybe having a better outcome. And he's still running hard up the first baseline to try to beat, a ground ball out, or he's diving. Here they're down maybe a 10-run game. He's diving down the line to get a ball and rob a hit. And that really, I didn't, I remember seeing that. And, as a ball player, myself in Little League, I just took a lot from that. And, I'm not Don Mattingly, but I became very competitive in my own right. To when I see that, I kind of, you take your cues from people you look up to, and sometimes I get too serious. I'd have teammates say, "Dude, it's just a baseball game." I'm like, "No, that's right. You're right. You made my point. It is a baseball game. Let's play." And I really, like you said, I think that speaks a lot about not just the player Don Mattingly, but the man Don Mattingly too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, all right. So, we talked about, obviously, you mentioned with the pandemic kind of ruining spring training plans last year. We're a little more than a year into it. We got the vaccine, obviously, 3 vaccines on the market. Some of the numbers are trending better. It's early. I don't want to jinx nothing. But we lost the national last year. We had the industry summit be virtual, which I didn't attend it, but all reports were it was a tremendous event. And the big thing is there's all speculation. I got to ask you, I'm planning to attend, as I did plan to attend in Atlantic City. I'm planning to go to Chicago. You ask 7 different people what they think, you'll get 4 different answers. So what you could say. I mean, right now, do you see any issues? I know it's hard to say. It's sort of speculative. I'm not going to hold you, but do you think this? Is there any chance maybe this gets moved? Sort of what initially happened last year, like date wise, or even venue change, or is everything looking good for the event to take place as scheduled?
Well, everything you just talked about would lead me to speculate, and
yeah,
I don't know if that's if that's the right way to approach this. I can tell you that we're in full planning mode. We're going forward, and whatever rumors are out there, that's what they are, rumors. I mean, I've heard that the National is going to be moved to Dallas. I've
heard that one.
There's so many different speculations that, but let me tell you this. First of all, we can't just move a show the magnitude of the National. I mentioned earlier that I work with all the leagues, so I've worked in almost every major convention facility throughout the country, and so I mean I have an understanding of the good, bad, and the ugly. And when I talk about that, I mean space, unions, good, bad, easy, hard, hotels, transportation, and I have to tell you that obviously for us, I would, and I shouldn't say for us. I mean for the hobby, Chicago is a perfect scenario because it's centrally located. It's not in the city of Chicago. It's right outside the city of Chicago. It's close to the airport. It's got 400,000 square feet. It's on one floor. We have a great relationship with the village of Rosemont. We have a great relationship with the convention facility. A lot of these things come into play when you're planning something. I mean, having the exhibitors, load in, load out. I've been in some convention centers throughout the country where that's extremely hard and expensive, and and even to the point where a lot of things don't go right. So, that is one point. I think the key thing for us is, first of all, let me say this: there's not going to be any change of venue this year. We're not going to Dallas. We're not going to Seattle. We're not going to Miami. We're not going anywhere other than Chicago. And the reason being is because we can't turn on that dime. We just can't make that pivot. It's just impossible when you think about it. Well, some people say, well, Dallas has got a convention center. Yeah, Dallas has got a convention center, and I worked there for the '95 All-Star Game, with Major League Baseball. So I know it. I know what it is. But I also know that, like during the summer months, I think the Mary Kay has the convention facilities for like most of July and August, and we're a summer show. We can't we can't move when we post.
You don't want to split the room with Mary Kay?
No, it's not that. It's just
I'm just kidding.
There's not enough space between the two of us. Yeah, but when we postponed it last year, we did that with great hesitancy because we didn't really want to move it, but at the same time, we felt that it was something that we wanted to. We didn't know what was going to happen, with the pandemic. We didn't know. It could have really gone a different route and been open for us to proceed, but it didn't. But we wanted people to have continued hope. We wanted to say, hey, we understand not everybody was going to make it. I mean, this is unprecedented times. We got to think of that way. We got to think like, how is the rest of the world dealing with this, right? We're all working on contingency plans and situations that we normally wouldn't have to or even want to think about doing. But so for our purposes now, I worked in Toronto where we had in Toronto we had 2 floors, and Pittsburgh, the All-Star game there for MLB, we had 2 floors, and we can't do that with the National. Can you imagine the National with 2 floors? I mean, that would just be unbelievable, and I can't even imagine.
I don't know about 2 floors, but I will say this, and you might know where. I mean, right now the hobby's booming. We have a lot of new people, new hobbyists. It's I've said this on my show, Ray. The attendance records are probably going to be broken each year now. That's held as new folks get in. And you may need 2 floors just with the infusion of new people in the hobby. I know you don't. I know that's not ideal. And I'm half kidding, but it is going to be pandemic or no pandemic. I think the attendance is going to be very high. I've said on this very show that assuming everything goes as scheduled and there's no sort of restrictions, maybe other than wearing a mask, it's going to be, people are itching. I know there's been a couple shows in Dallas and stuff, but the National is the National. It's the Super. I've coined. I don't know if I'm the first, or I've coined it the Super Bowl of the hobby, and that's really what it is. And I think with it not taking place last year and under understandable circumstances, I think people are chomping at the bit to go. If you have, I've said, hey, if I have to wear a mask and do all those stuff, then we've been wearing a mask. At least I have, as most people, for the last year, almost the last year. So what's another week to enjoy the hobby and all the people involved in it, and you have to wear a mask. And like my wife's a nurse, like she said, John, even when we're on the other side of this, masks are going to be more common than we even realize. Like people are just going to wear them, just precautionary, like just out of a little fear based. And so, yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, you mentioned earlier that people are getting vaccinated now. Pretty regularly. Hopefully, it even speed up a little bit more. The president said everybody should be vaccinated by May, the beginning of May. I mean, that's great. If that happens, then we're in good shape. If it doesn't happen, then we have to start thinking about contingency plans. Now, obviously, somebody asked me, well, what's a contingency plan? Well, we always work on contingency plans. Because
life is a contingency plan. Right?
I mean, within the show itself, there's always something that we're preparing for. Like if it doesn't go the way it should, or the way we want it to. So we're always thinking, what if? Contingency. It's no different when we're talking about the entire show. So, but I just want to say that we are talking with on a daily basis. Well, not I say daily, but on an ongoing basis with the state, local, and authorities, both the health officials there and the convention people, just to kind of get an idea of what they're thinking about, because ultimately they're going to make the decision for us. We have to comply with what they come down, what they do. Now we can help them and we can work with them and we can tell them what we're prepared to do, but that's ultimately who we have to listen to, and we're prepared to do what's ever right for the health and safety of our exhibitors, our attendees, our athletes, our entertainers, and anyone else who's part of this convention experience. So we'll do the right thing. People say, well, are you going to wear masks? Are you going to take temperatures? Oh, we don't know that yet. We don't know that yet. But I can guarantee that that's all in the conversation. I mean, we're throwing everything out there and kind of we'll have a plan. There's no question about that. We don't know today what that plan's going to be and how impactful that will be. And so we're continuing as if it's funny because I've actually started working earlier than before because I've been getting so many calls from media, and I'm not talking about the hobby media, although they're all great. I really love them, but I'm talking about outside mainstream media. Yeah. And because there's a combination here. There's obviously the national and what's going to happen, but it's also like what's going on with this industry. Yes. Why is it surging like it is? Why are people paying that kind of money? And so I've been one of my things that I always do when I go into a market, I deal with all the media. I deal with the radio, television, print, and we do partnerships, we do promotionals. I mean, that's how we get the conference exposed. And then I've always thought outside the box to try to bring in like the business reporter, the social reporter, and all that. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It depends on who's there. But I can't tell you how many. I mean, I got a call from the business reporter from the Chicago Tribune. Now, I understand that when I do a deal with the Tribune, I do it with a certain department. They are like Coke and Pepsi. They don't talk to each other internally, Yeah. And just because I do a deal with Chicago Tribune doesn't mean that their business reporter is going to talk to me. I mean, and they tell me that. They tell me that all the time, and I understand it. I get it. So when this business reporter called me, I said, "Well, thank, I appreciate it." Well, he wanted to know what's going on with the industry. He wanted to know what's going on with the show and all that. But I can tell by the amount of interest and the questioning and the search for answers about why the industry has done so well, and then can it sustain this, and will the national help sustain that? Well, that's a great thing. I mean, that's a great situation to be in. And then the other thing that's so amazing to me is, I've been working on the social media, the Instagram for the national for about 3 or 4 years now. And in the beginning, it was kind of tough to pull content, to create content. And what I do a lot is I try to repost like what's happening in the industry. Just keep people abreast.
Reposted some of our stuff. I'll thank you on the air, Ray. I appreciate that.
Well, it must have been interesting because.
Well, I appreciate that too. You saying that. So, you do a great job with that. But go ahead. I don't mean to cut you.
But the thing is, like, there is so much content right now out there, and I can't tell you how many from the manufacturers, the distributors, the exhibitors, the retailer. I mean, everybody has seemed to get on board, and I think obviously they recognize that with being having the e-commerce do as fantastic as it has, but I think they also recognize that it really works. Pushing their social media. So not only we have more quantity of social content out there, but the quality seems to be getting extremely better too. And with all the people like yourself doing what you do, that's huge. That's fantastic for us.
Yeah, no, I agree. And people always ask me with new shows like, does it bother? No, like this. I'm a guy that I'm not competing against 1,000 podcasts. I'm kind of inner driven. Like I want my next episode to be better than the previous one, and so that's sort of my approach. You can't, I can't listen to. But go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, and John, also too, think about it this way. When I first started getting involved with directly when Mike Burkus and John Brogy asked me to come on board back in about 11 years ago, it was good. It was building. You had your community, your environment, and we thought it was large. We thought again obviously the numbers were good in terms of attendance and all that. And then as we grow now, you think, oh gosh, I remember in Chicago, we had a great show in Chicago in 19. And I thought that, the next year was just, I thought we'd just keep going. Get better and better.
Yeah.
But you think, well, okay, we maxed out, right? No, we haven't maxed out. I can't tell you. It's so many people coming on board right now from a social media standpoint. I can't, there must be millions of card collectors or memorabilia dealers or whatever that are just coming. So I don't even know if we've hit our max. I think we're far from it.
No.
And so like when you're saying, you don't mind a couple, I think there's plenty of room for everybody.
Yeah. Like I said, I think, pandemic or no pandemic, the 2021 National is going to probably set attendance records. I think people, if you have to wear a mask and take those, safety precautions, then we've been doing that already. I don't think you're asking anybody to do anything they haven't done up until that point. It's not anything new. You should be sort of used to it. And they, even if someone's an anti-mask person, not to make it political, hey, if you want to attend the show, this is what you're required to do. Kind of, suck it up, Buttercup, a little bit in there.
I mean, what we're gonna do what's right for you and the attendees. We're not gonna kowtow and be second guessing situations. If that's required, I mean, if that's necessary, then it'll be necessary. But again, it will be based on meetings, conversations we have with health officials and the local authorities, but that's our number one priority: is health and safety.
Yeah, no, and as it should be, and I, I know I know that's the case, but hearing that for anyone that's one, and there's your answer. One of the other things I've seen make the rounds as far as rumors and innuendos is having like shifts of people. Like you can be in the room from 10 to 3, then the next group B comes in 2 to 6. Is that based on anything? Is that on the table? Is there anything you want to touch with that?
Nothing. I mean, everything you hear, John, is all speculation and rumor, and probably just thoughtful people trying to come up with potential solutions.
Or break news that's not really news.
Right. As far as we're concerned, we don't have all the information we need to make a decision yet.
Yeah.
Honestly, would we? I mean, I'm sure we'll think about that, but it's it's one of those things where you go through a process and you kind of try to rule everything out. So we'll take the bulldozer and just go forward and just start picking at things, coming up with ideas, and if we feel it's going to work and it's going to comply with what what the authorities need, then we'll do it. But we're gonna just do what's right for everybody involved.
Yeah, and obviously that makes sense, and that's the way it should be. Would someone want to hear you say, well, we don't really care, the event's happening regardless, and we're going to put you in harm's way? I don't think anyone would want to hear that or really ultimately sign up for that. If it comes down to wearing a mask like we have been, or most of us have been, then that is what it is. And I think it's going to be, like my wife says, sort of more the norm. Even after this thing we're on the other side of this, I think we're still going to see some of that. It's never going to be maybe exactly what it was, prior to the pandemic. And
one thing that I know that people talk about, and I've been asked this, is obviously when will those decisions be made? And after I tell them, we can't make it right now. But we understand. We understand that they want to make plans. We understand that they want to make air travel, hotel, and all the above now, which they should, because it's going to be really tough. My recommendation would be, go ahead, make the plans, make your hotel reservations, make your airline reservations now. From what we know about the travel industry right now, they're very forgiving. If in fact we get to the point, and God forbid this happens, but on the other side of the coin, if something does prevent us from conducting the show, I mean, most likely they'll be able to back out of the hotel and airfare at that time. And I would ask them before you make that, can we do that? But I would go ahead, go to the National's website and check out the hotels and do that quick. It's funny. It's funny. Some people have speculated that they're going to buy their tickets now, the admission tickets. And by the way, the admission tickets are selling really well. But they said we're going to buy them now because we feel like they're going to be scalped at the convention center, which would be really interesting. That you have admission tickets.
Well, that's the way the hobbies go. And I mean, like you said, you touched on it yourself. It's just, you mentioned how you've been media requested to speak on that. I even locally have had 3 news, local news, interview me for what's going on in the hobby. Never did any kind of hobby coverage before, right? All of a sudden, my phone is ringing about it, and I don't mind doing it. I feel like I'm sort of an advocate and an ambassador in a positive way, and I love the hobby. So another chance to talk about it, I'm all for it. But that's the thing with the hobby this year. It's really kind of transcended outside of its circle into mainstream media. We've seen celebrities.
I think a lot to do. I know you're starting to talk about it. A lot has to do about the outside money. And I see that. I've seen it on several different levels. I've seen it on the lower level where, we have a lot of followers from Shanghai, from Germany, Australia, Korea. I'm talking about significant numbers of people following us now on Instagram. And and you can see that they've got the product. So it's pretty fascinating. Japan, I think with them, and then when you have your more of your influencers who basically have come in and recognize an opportunity, and I think we're fortunate. There may be one or two that may not be really helpful for us long term. I'm talking about the industry. I think for the most part, these people are genuine. I know you heard about the gentleman that bought the Mickey Mantle for $5.1 million.
Yeah, he was on the show.
Rob's a fantastic. Rob's a fantastic guy.
Yeah.
And I contacted him, and we talked, and I invited him to the National, and right away he said he just needed more information. Gave him the information. He's going to go to the National for the first time ever, and so that's exciting to have somebody of his caliber. And I think the one thing I'm really excited about is our main stage, Mike Burkus' main stage. Mike came up with that idea years ago, and we've kind of set it up, and it's taken off. Rob and Ivan from GTS do a great job of hosting that for us, and I talked to Rob the other day, and we're talking about the unbelievable amount of content that we have this year. We're blocking out times now where to focus in on impactful sessions. So that's very exciting.
It'll give them too a little bit of a break too. I think I know Rob and Ivan. So give them a little bit of they can maybe walk around and get the talk to people, see the wares and everything else that everyone else are doing. So, but like you said, they do they do a tremendous job and have for years, and that's not easy if you're in content creation. That's not as easy as they make it look. They may make it look seamless, but that it's not as that's a testament to the job they're doing.
They do a great job. We're really excited to have those guys. And TriStar does a great job for us. They're in a position right now where they're going out and checking for athletes. Their availability for the show. We have the utmost faith in them. They're great guys, and they know the industry. They're checking with the athletes, kind of get some kind of feeling of what they're coming from. I'm hoping that with this whole thing with vaccination, I'm just hoping that's enough confidence for somebody to say, I'll be there. I know I've talked to a number of athletes who I posed that question to, not necessarily for the National, but just in general, but traveling and doing things. And more and more of them are saying, as long as if I get vaccinated, I'll feel comfortable about making that trip or making a trip. And so, that's something that they're dealing with. And we're confident that, we're going to have, we don't know how many athletes we're going to have, but I'm confident we're going to max out and they'll do another tremendous job for us. So we have a great team. I have to say that. Everybody that works in the National and partners like TriStar and Rob and Ivan and others just do a fantastic job. So that's why, all of us can feel confident that, if it can happen, it'll happen.
Yeah, no, I think so. And if it happens, which I think it will, and I'm hoping it will, I'll be there and with bells on and enjoy. Whatever scenarios we have to enjoy it, we'll enjoy it. We'll have a good time. One of the things I'm a guy that, like, I know sometimes times can get tough, but you gotta make the best of it and keep plugging forward. After the dark clouds comes the sun, and I think, like I said, probably like a broken record. I think it's going to, speaking of broken records, I think it's going to break the record, for all the reasons we talked about it, with new folks coming in, content creators, hobbyists, collectors, investors. I know some people don't like the word, but it's real. When cards sell for $5.2 million and up now, that's an investment class level. Whether you may not do it yourself for that, I don't, but you got to be honest with what's going on, and so we've got sort of the perfect storm, all the ingredients. I think the fact that there wasn't one in 2020, people miss it, and even though it's only been one, thankfully, that I think people are rearing to get back in there and celebrate. I think it's a celebration. It's the Super Bowl of the hobby. It's a week like this. Super Bowl's a week with press row. I compare it on that level. It's a celebration of the hobby, and I think people, after not being able to really do a lot of traveling and going to shows even in other areas, I think people are going to be chomping at the bit to kind of let loose and have some fun. Do it safely. Obviously, do it safely. Piggybacking off what you said too, Ray, with but making hotel and airfares. A lot of these places, it's very cheap. It's like $5 or $10 more. You get the travel insurance, and for $5 or $10 more, like you said, worst case scenario, then you can get your money refunded. It's funny. I didn't normally do that. I don't normally do that. And in Atlantic City, don't ask me why. I don't even have a good answer. I don't know. I might have checked the box by accident, or it was only like $6 more and so I did it. And we know what happened, and obviously everything is refunded and no questions asked. It might have been that way anyway under the circumstances, like you said. But for the $6, it was worth the peace of mind to know worst case scenario that you're not going to be out some funds, if you will. So most places are probably definitely doing that now, even if it's $6, $10, $20, it's well worth it. And
buy your admission tickets. Go online.
Don't wait. So, well, Ray, I want to thank you for coming on and being so candid, sharing some of those great stories about the folks you've worked with over the years, and letting us a little bit even behind the curtain there. Hearing some stuff that we may not normally get to sharing that, where we might not get those stories, and with the National being very upfront and answering some of those speculative things where a lot of hobbyists are hearing through different channels, and sort of clearing that air, and so they can start, like you said, buy your admission tickets, make your plans, and we'll all be in Chicago last few days of July and the front end of August.
You said it, John.
Yep. Anything, if you want to give out any of those social medias where people can do that, I always give the guests sort of like, the final word, plug, promote anything, get the website stuff out there so people can do what they need to do.
Forget about the rumors. Check us out on our social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at NSCC Show, and then nsccshow.com, the website. And we'll have all the information. Any information that we get that is concrete, that is definite, we will post it. And we understand that everybody wants to start making plans, but it is what it is. And obviously, we're living in unprecedented times, and But we will have the information for you, and we will, hopefully cut out all that speculation for you.
Yep, go straight to the source. That's what I always say. Well, Ray, stay safe, stay healthy, have fun at spring training. I'm sort of jealous. I don't know if you can. I'm sort of a bigger guy, but if you have a big suitcase, maybe I can sneak in there and make the trip. I don't know if my job would probably miss me, but as someone who's been to spring training, it's a great experience, and enjoy that and have fun.
Well, thank you, John, for having me on. This has been fantastic, and I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.